Billionaire spots his long-lost sister working as a black waitress by her scar. What happens next? What if the person you'd searched for your entire life was standing right in front of you, but you almost didn't recognize them? Marcus Williams sat in the corner booth of Rosie's diner, his expensive suit looking completely out of place among the worn vinyl seats and cracked linoleum floors. The 72-year-old billionaire had built an empire from nothing, but tonight he wasn't thinking about his companies or his wealth. He was thinking about the small crescent-shaped scar he'd just glimpsed on the waitress's left wrist as she poured his coffee. His hands trembled as he set down his cup, spilling coffee onto the scratched table. That scar. He'd know it anywhere. It was identical to his own, a matching mark from the day their foster home caught fire 47 years ago. The day he lost his baby sister forever. The waitress turned away, but Marcus's heart was already racing. Could it really be her? Could it really be little Melody, the 6-year-old girl he'd promised to find someday? Where are you watching from tonight? Have you ever wondered what it would feel like to find someone you thought was lost forever? Marcus had spent decades searching for Melody through private investigators, social services, and even hiring teams of genealogists. Every lead had gone cold. Every hope had been crushed. Now, at 72, he'd almost given up believing he'd ever see his sister again. The foster care system had separated them after the fire, sending him to one family in Chicago while Melody disappeared into another placement somewhere in the South. He'd been 14 then, old enough to remember her laugh, her way of humming while she colored, and most importantly, the matching scars they'd gotten when they helped each other escape through a broken window that terrible night. The waitress approached his table again, her movements tired but graceful. She looked to be in her mid-60s, with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a neat bun and kind eyes that seemed familiar yet distant. Her name tag read, Melody, in faded plastic letters. Marcus's breath caught in his throat. He studied her face, searching for traces of the little girl he remembered. The shape of her eyes, the way she tilted her head slightly when concentrating. It was all there, aged by time but unmistakably familiar. "More coffee, sir?" she asked, her voice carrying a warm southern accent that made Marcus's heart skip. He nodded, not trusting his voice to remain steady. As she leaned forward to pour, he caught another glimpse of the scar. This time, he was certain. The crescent shape, the exact placement on her left wrist, it was identical to his own. But how could he be sure? How could he approach her without seeming like some crazy old man? What if he was wrong? What if this hope, like all the others, crumbled into nothing? The weight of 47 years of searching pressed down on him as he watched her walk away, disappearing into the kitchen with no idea that her long-lost brother was sitting just 20 feet away. Marcus sat frozen in the booth for nearly an hour, ordering pie he couldn't taste and coffee he didn't want, just to keep watching Melody work. She moved through the diner with practiced efficiency, treating every customer with genuine warmth. He overheard her chatting with regulars about their grandchildren, their health problems, their small victories. She remembered everyone's usual orders, asked about family members by name, and lit up the room with her gentle laughter. This was the sister he remembered, always caring about others, always finding joy in simple moments. But as the evening wore on, Marcus noticed the tiredness in her movements, the way she winced slightly when she bent down to clean tables. Her shoes were worn thin, and her uniform had been mended in several places. While he lived in a mansion with more rooms than he could count, his sister was working the night shift at a roadside diner, probably struggling to make ends meet. The guilt hit him like a physical blow. All these years, he'd been building his fortune while she was right here, working hard just to survive. During a quiet moment, Marcus overheard Melody talking to another waitress about needing to pick up extra shifts to cover her grandson's medical bills. The boy had been born with a heart condition and needed surgery the family couldn't afford. Melody's voice trembled slightly as she spoke about it, but she quickly composed herself and got back to work. Marcus felt tears sting his eyes. His baby sister had become a grandmother, had lived an entire life he knew nothing about, and was now facing struggles he could easily solve if only he could figure out how to approach her. If this moment is touching your heart, please give this video a thumbs up. Marcus knew he couldn't just sit there anymore. He had to take a chance, Had to find a way to connect with her. But what if she didn't remember him? What if she didn't want to be found? As closing time approached and the diner emptied out, Marcus realized this might be his only opportunity. But just as he gathered the courage to speak to her, Melody suddenly stopped, staring at his hands as he reached for his wallet. Her eyes had locked onto his left wrist, where his own crescent-shaped scar was clearly visible. Their eyes met across the diner, and for a moment, time seemed to stop completely. Melody's face went pale as she stared at Marcus's scar, her hand unconsciously moving to cover her own. She took a step backward, then another, as if seeing a ghost. Marcus slowly stood up, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might burst. Neither of them spoke for what felt like an eternity, both afraid that words might shatter whatever impossible miracle was happening between them. "Marcus," Melody whispered, her voice barely audible. The name hung in the air like a prayer. Marcus nodded, tears streaming down his face as he saw recognition dawn in his sister's eyes. She remembered him. After all these years, through all the changes time had carved into their faces, she still knew her big brother. But instead of running into his arms, Melody's expression suddenly shifted to something Marcus hadn't expected: anger. 47 years, she said, her voice shaking. 47 years I wondered if you were dead or alive. I used to dream you'd come looking for me, but you never did. Where were you? The pain in her voice cut through Marcus like a knife. All his money, all his success, meant nothing in the face of his sister's hurt. Marcus tried to explain about the investigators, the failed searches, the dead ends, but Melody held up her hand to stop him. You became rich and famous, Marcus Williams. I saw your picture in magazines. You could have found me if you really wanted to. She pulled off her apron with trembling hands. I have to go. This is too much. As she headed toward the back of the diner, Marcus felt his world collapsing. He'd found her only to lose her again, this time through his own failures. The other waitress, an elderly woman named Rosa, approached Marcus gently. Don't give up on her, honey, she said quietly. Melody's been hurt by too many people who promised to stay and then left. She's got walls built up higher than most folks can climb. But I've worked with her for 15 years, and I've never seen her look at anyone the way she just looked at you. Have you ever faced a moment like this, where words felt impossible but were desperately needed? Let us know in the comments. Rosa's words gave Marcus a flicker of hope, but as he watched Melody's car pull away from the diner, he wondered if he'd just lost his sister forever for the second time in his life. Marcus didn't sleep that night. Instead, he sat in his hotel room, staring at old photographs and documents he'd carried with him for decades, everything he'd kept from their childhood together. Among them was a small, hand-drawn picture Melody had made for him the week before the fire. It showed two stick figures holding hands under a rainbow, with Marcus and Melody Forever written in crooked 6-year-old handwriting. He'd treasured it all these years, carrying it in his wallet like a talisman. The next morning, Marcus drove back to the diner, but Melody wasn't there. Rosa told him she'd called in sick, something she'd never done in 15 years. She lives about 10 miles out on Magnolia Street, Rosa said, her eyes kind but worried. Yellow house with a garden full of sunflowers. But Marcus, you be gentle with her. That woman's been through more than most people can handle. When Marcus pulled up to the small yellow house, he could see why Rosa had mentioned the sunflowers. The entire front yard was a sea of golden blooms, and despite everything, he smiled. Melody had always loved sunflowers, even as a little girl. Some things, he realized, never changed. He sat in his car for 20 minutes, trying to find the right words, before finally walking up to the front door. Melody answered on the second knock, her eyes red from crying but determined. Before Marcus could speak, she held up the small drawing he'd given her all those years ago, his own childhood artwork showing two stick figures under a rainbow. I kept this too, she said softly. I never stopped hoping you'd come back, Marcus. But when you didn't, when I saw you on TV living your big life, I thought you'd forgotten about the little sister who used to sing you to sleep when you had nightmares. Marcus pulled out his own drawing, the one she'd made for him, and watched her eyes widen in amazement. "I've carried this with me every single day for 47 years, he whispered. "I never forgot you, Melody. I never stopped looking. I just didn't know how to look in the right places." If you've been enjoying this story of family and hope, subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales like this one. As brother and sister stood on that porch, two worn pieces of childhood artwork trembling in their hands, they realized that sometimes the most important things survive not in our minds, but in our hearts, waiting for the perfect moment to bring us home. What followed was the longest conversation of their lives. Sitting in Melody's small living room, surrounded by photographs of children and grandchildren Marcus had never met, they slowly rebuilt the bridge that time and circumstance had torn down. Melody told him about her life, the struggles and joys, the family she'd built, the husband she'd lost to cancer 5 years ago. Marcus shared his own story, the loneliness behind his success, the way he'd poured himself into work because it was easier than facing the emptiness where his family should have been. The most beautiful moment came when Melody's grandson Danny arrived home from school. The 10-year-old boy who needed heart surgery looked so much like Marcus had at that age that it took his breath away. "Danny," Melody said, her voice full of wonder, "I'd like you to meet your great-uncle Marcus. The one I told you stories about." Danny's eyes grew wide as he looked between them, and Marcus knew that this child would grow up knowing his family, something both he and Melody had been denied. That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sunflowers gold, Marcus made his sister a promise. Not just to help with Danny's medical bills, though that was settled within hours, but to be the brother he should have been all along. They talked about selling the big empty mansion and buying a smaller place nearby, about family dinners and shared holidays, about all the lost time they couldn't recover but could honor by making the most of what remained. Melody reached over and took her brother's hand, their matching scars touching for the first time since they were children. "You know what the funny thing is?" she said, squeezing his fingers gently. "I always knew we'd find each other again someday. I just thought it would happen sooner." Marcus laughed through his tears, thinking about all the expensive searches and private investigators when what he'd really needed was just to follow his heart to a small diner on a quiet highway. 6 months later, Marcus moved into the house next door to his sister, and their family grew by one more when Danny's surgery was successful and he came home with a healthy heart and a smile that could light up the world. Sometimes the greatest treasures aren't found in boardrooms or bank accounts, but in the simple act of coming home to the people who knew us before we became who we thought we had to be. If you enjoyed this story of family, hope, and second chances, please remember to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments about your own family reunions or the people you hold dear, and subscribe for more heartwarming stories that remind us what truly matters in life. Thank you for joining Marcus and Melody on their journey home to each other.